Hello, and welcome to the Awakening Health Show. My name is Meridian Grace. I'm a naturopath and homeopath. I think I began homeopathy more than 50 years ago as an exploration and as well as herbology and lifestyle. It's been an amazing journey. I'm going to be 66 before too long here and feeling better than I did in my 30s. And what I wish for all of you is that you discover that incredible, brilliant healing that's constantly going on in your body and learn to take advantage of that and to do things that support your body in healing itself. And look at what we can do to reduce the factors that get in the way, that block the miraculous healing capacities of our body. So today, that's going to be the focus of our show. Things that you can do at home, things that you can do to support yourself, and things that we might look at removing from our lives or greatly reducing that have a negative impact on our body's supportive mechanisms. The healing and amazing communication through frequency, light, and sound that is constantly going on. We have far too many things we have no control over anymore that are extremely toxic to the body. And so what we want to do, whenever possible, is to reduce the toxic load on our body so that we have more time and energy for creating new healthy cells. Because in every moment, hundreds of millions of cells are dying, and hundreds of millions of cells are being born. And what goes on for those cells has a tremendous amount to do with what's going on in our lives at the moment that they're being born. So if we want to create a loving, healthy environment for these new baby cells, which we really in many ways need to consider, looking at ourselves as a nurturing, caring parent for these cells. If we want to nourish them, we need to look at what to do. So a lot of you know, and we've talked a lot about diet, and we may mention that a little bit, but today we're going to be talking about things that may be in your environment that you're unaware of that could be creating problems, and things that are kind of cool and hip that people are doing that could be very harmful to you, that you want to bring to a real minimum. And if you haven't gotten involved with them, perhaps you might not want to. So y'all, I'm going to bring up an uncomfortable subject for many, because I know that many of us love the idea of using our bodies as a way to provide a surface for art. In fact, we were just talking about it a moment ago with Dr. Massey, my beloved, who was mentioning about a funny tattoo that he saw. But most people don't think about how tattoos are made from heavy metal substances and very, very toxic petrochemicals for colorings. And what we're doing when we do a tattoo is we're putting that color right in the location of the lymphatic system and also where the meridians are in Chinese medicine, which have to do with the flow of energy to our organs. And there are some people who are extremely sensitive to those substances, and that could be found out by doing a genetic test. But there are people whose major insult that has contributed to serious autoimmune disease has been those tattoos. So I highly recommend that you really think hard before you get a tattoo. If you already have one now, then you just want to do really good things for the surface of the skin where they are. And also support detoxification, perhaps with something like a sauna. And soon we're going to be doing a video demonstrating a wonderful sauna that's inexpensive and how to use it. but an infrared sauna with the red light will help to reduce the toxic load, bring out sweat, help to pull out heavy metals. It's a wonderful process to do that's very helpful when we're dealing with the types of toxins that we're all being exposed to. So, those of you who might be tattoo artists out there, you might want to explore that possibility and be one of the unique people who are providing tattoos that might have an actual beneficial effect because of the density of nutrient in the tattooing substance that you're using. And there are certain things, I don't know how it would work for a tattoo, so I'm just this is just coming off the top of my head here, but like turmeric is extremely yellowy orange, ochre color, and also very anti-inflammatory. So there may be some way of working with a very concentrated form of turmeric. Beet has wonderful benefits for production of NOS, nitric oxide, and great for the heart and for the circulatory system. And there may be a way of working with beet. They may not last as many years as a tattoo that's harmful and toxic to your body, but it's something to consider. But let's talk about some things that are like everybody's involved with, like cookware. Many people don't realize that using aluminum or Teflon can be very harmful. Aluminum is one of the most toxic substances to the brain and contributors to Alzheimer's disease. So cooking with aluminum is not a good idea. And especially anything that's acidic, like a tomato sauce or something that has vinegars in it, because that would pull even more aluminum into the food and create more of a toxic issue. And when we talk more about neurological issues, we will talk in great depth about aluminum. And that brings me to antiperspirants, which also have aluminum in them. So if anything says alum or aluminum, you want to stay away from it. Now let's talk about what you can do instead. Instead of using aluminum for cookware or for an antiperspirant, first of all, I like using the old-fashioned Pyrex that has no kind of coatings on it. They're challenging to find, but I find them used every now and again, and I do the majority of my saucepan cooking in a Pyrex type pot. There are different qualities of stainless steel. The highest qualities of stainless steel do not release any of their other metals. Some people are sensitive to nickel, so unless you get a really high quality form of stainless steel, you may be getting exposed to nickel. So having at some point a heavy metal test could be very beneficial to find out if you're one of those nickel sensitive people.
What is the color of the Pyrex, the Pyrex that you're talking about? Is it transparent?
Brown.
It's brown.
Mm-hmm. It's a gold. It's like a soft brown color. I've got 2 of them on my stove at the moment that I'm cooking with. And for me, because I have low iron levels, and that is an important thing to find out, I use cast iron whenever I'm cooking in a frying pan. So when I'm making eggs, for instance, I use my cast iron frying pan. And when I want to lightly saute things, I use my cast iron frying pan. If you happen to be particularly high in iron, which is an issue for many men, then we want to not use a cast iron frying pan and deal with the challenges of a stainless steel frying pan. The same is true with our eating utensils and our cooking utensils. A lot of people are using plastics. There's even question now, I went and bought a lot of silicone things because I was told that those are inert. But it might be worth your while to go online and explore silicone a little bit and see if you might question the use of silicone very much in your cooking processes or for your different cooking utensils. but using stainless steel utensils, and also something that's I've recently discovered, which I love, is bamboo utensils. They're really lovely. And of course, wooden spoons are great to use for cooking and all that sort of thing. So those are fun. And aluminum foil. I forgot to mention that we were talking about aluminum. So I do use aluminum foil, but I never put it directly in touch with my food. Whenever I want to cook and have aluminum foil over the top of something, I first of all start out with a natural parchment paper, and I will cover the entire surface of the food that I might want to bake in the oven with the parchment paper, and then I'll cover it with aluminum foil. And that's true also when it comes to putting things in the refrigerator. Like I just was feeding Rich some chicken for lunch, and we took parchment paper, wrapped the leftover chicken in the parchment paper, and then I put it inside of a plastic bag and put it in the refrigerator because I didn't want to have the chicken exposed to the plastic, which is a nasty carcinogen. So let's look at that. Plasticware. People use it a lot to store food in. When we go shopping, we find a lot of the things that we purchase are in plastic. So I recommend that you start collecting glass jars and glass storage containers. And again, what I do is I'll take things out of their plastic, put them into most of the time it's a Pyrex type of glass container. They typically have plastic tops, so out comes the parchment paper, which goes on top, and then the plastic lid goes on top of that.
And just drinking out of a plastic cup, which means it's not stored in there, is that different, or do you also want to avoid plastic cups and plastic straws?
Glad that
plastic
you
straws.
mentioned that, Bernard. I like to stay away from plastic everything. I tell people especially, why buy water in plastic bottles? We can actually buy water much more cheaply if we go to the dispensers, like at some of the stores where they have RO water, and bring glass bottles. And I know they're heavy, but at least we're not going to be getting exposed to the nasty carcinogens that are in the plastic bottles. And it's really a big deal because we are exposed to so many carcinogens, and we'll be talking about a number of them as we look through this process today. But I highly recommend drinking out of glass. There are stainless steel containers. Again, you want to look at the quality of the stainless steel in case you have a nickel issue. I still prefer the glass, and there are glass bottles now that have little rubber coatings on the outside to protect them if they fall. But what I used to do was take rubber bands, and I would decorate my bottles with lots and lots of rubber bands of different colors, and that will also help to protect the bottle if it falls.
What a great use for all those elastic bands that seem to end up in the garbage.
Yes, yes. So that's another way to recycle.
And so with the what was the other question I had? The
plastic straws?
Well, I've never seen a glass or a wooden straw.
There is actually pipettes that are used in chemistry.
Well, the glass pipettes, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, there was another question about, if you're going to have all of that, take all of those precautions not to bring your food into contact with plastic, what about the whole thing where when you purchase it, a lot of the time it's already been stored in plastic for ages?
I know.
It's kind of like, is it like just defeating the whole purpose just by switching it from something that's been contaminated by already?
It just reduces it, and we might want to look at, educating the people that we purchase things from. That's one of the reasons why I highly recommend that we go to places like the farmer's market.
Yeah, right.
where we can bring our own jars, where we can bring our own bags.
Bags, jars, just, yeah, exactly, absolutely. I mean,
Yes.
people just need to get back into that.
Yes, more and more. And there is a movement more towards,
Good.
that kind of awareness happening now. So it's very exciting. The other thing is that these days, to help reduce the cost of heating and air conditioning and all the rest of it, we are creating tighter and tighter and tighter houses with less fresh air.
Mm.
And this is particularly a huge problem in office settings. So I think a worthwhile place to invest some of your money or add to your Santa list is a really high quality air purifier, so that you can purify your air. And at home, the easiest thing is take time to open your windows. So typically in Austin this time of year,
And you do it at night.
right, that's the time to do it, would be at night or the very early morning, the wee
Yeah.
hours of the morning.
Yeah.
And that way, you might be able to keep your windows open for a few hours while you're sleeping, get that fresh air, which is wonderful for your sleep. Help air out the house, and then close your windows again. So there are some very, very toxic substances that people are using, thinking that they are beneficial. And probably one of the worst of the very worst are plug-in air fresheners. They are using an extremely toxic form of synthetic smells that there are people who are the canaries in our world who can demonstrate for you very quickly what happens if they're around one. They might be on their way to the hospital with a seizure or blacked out or unbelievably high blood pressure. I mean, they are so horribly toxic. And one sniff of them and I want to be out of the space. They're just as nasty as can be. Dr. Ray, a specialist in people who have environmental exposures, says if you use one of those in your house and you're environmentally sensitive, you should never go back in that house ever again, even if it's only on for an hour. That it will penetrate your clothing, your furniture, your house, your ducts, and everything, creating a toxic environment that cannot be cleaned up for somebody who's that sensitive.
Wow.
So don't ever start. It's not worth it. Please don't use those things. But I can tell you that people are nebulizing high quality essential oils into their air, and that's a very beneficial thing. But please make sure that they're not synthetic, inexpensive, cheap oils that can be harmful to you. Please make sure that you're looking at food grade, quality essential oils if you want to change the smell of the air or use them medicinally. So there are natural organic essential oils. One of the least expensive places that I've looked for those is something called Mountain Rose Organics. And they have an online presence, and I use their essential oils in my cooking. It's really fun. I might use a drop of fennel oil to flavor things, or even black pepper oil, ginger oil, cinnamon oil. It's really kind of fun to have these really concentrated, high quality organic oils to work with if you happen to really love good cuisine. And you can choose ones that are beneficial for your health as well. So please be aware of that. It should go without saying, but let's just talk about how herbicides and pesticides need to stay out of the house and out of your yard and out of the areas that you're in. We don't want to pollute the earth or ourselves or our loved ones with such things, and we're in a lot of the problems, we're experiencing a lot of the problems that we have now because of the use of these. And I can just tell you how shocking it was for Rich and I, because we just took a long road trip to Nashville from Austin, and typically when we were driving, we would have had to stop 2 or 3 times to clean the bugs off the windshield. We didn't need to clean the windshield the entire trip that spanned 10 days. It's just amazing. That gives you an idea of how little insect life there is and how harmful that is. The other thing that was shocking to us is we were in Nashville at a lovely home, and some friends who are really very, very aware of the environment and healthy things and doing good things for their soil. And they had, instead of grass, they had a whole yard of clover. And it was so beautiful, and it felt so good to walk on. But the thing that we remember as children is you didn't dare walk on clover as a child because there were so many bees.
Mm.
We only saw 1 or 2 bees in this entire yard of clover. So we need to really be aware of what we're doing. We could talk about that from the point of view of the microbiome or the holobiome of the earth, that we have changed it so much that life is no longer what it used to be. And that is going on inside of us as well. And a lot of the things that we're talking about today have to do with how to protect our sensitive ecology within our own bodies, our own microbiome, our own viral biome, our own fungal biome, our own every kind of holobiome. So please be aware that anything that you do to reduce these blocking factors to your own body's healing process is benefiting the whole planet. So there are some things that are worse than others, and probably the worst of all is fabric softeners. And if you know anybody who's environmentally sensitive and you take a walk in a neighborhood, if somebody's using a fabric softener and it's coming out their vent, you'll probably see them turn around and go back home, or take a huge detour around where that is, because it's so toxic and it can affect their health in immediate ways. I believe that these things affect all of us, whether we're healthy or not, but they're just not so obvious. And the people who are super sensitive make it really obvious to us that these things are detrimental. So please get rid of your fabric softeners, and please go to Environmental Working Group, EWG.org, and check out anything that you're going to be using in your house for cleaning, for washing your clothing, for washing your surfaces, your sinks, and for anything that you're going to put on your skin, your hair, your nails, or whatever. So much of the problems that females have, so many of them, particularly hormonally, are based on the toxic substances that are in self-care products. And we now use hundreds of them. There's just so many moisturizers and astringents and all the rest. There's also quite a lovely DIY focus these days of making it yourself, do it yourself, with real things, using things like apple cider vinegar as an astringent or witch hazel as an astringent, using things like avocado or egg yolk for doing facial masks. They're wonderful. They work really, really well. We have access to some of the purest, most amazing oils from a company called Andreas Seed Oils. And those are cold-pressed organic oils that actually smell and taste like the seeds or the nuts that they come out of. They're amazing. I've never tasted anything like them. They're in a, I believe it's called Myrex bottle that won't allow for any toxins to get into it, and preserves and actually energizes the oils themselves. It's
amazing.
I know. So our technology does some wonderful things and some horrible things. So one of the big deals that we have control over is our lighting. And most people don't realize this, but the new lights that everybody is being encouraged to use because they reduce the electrical consumption are loaded with mercury, and they are very high in the blue zones as far as the color frequencies go. And they are very harmful to our brains, and they tend to be stimulating and keep us awake. So I call those junk light. And we have native light and junk light. Native light is one of the most important things for healing. And if you want to see science that just doesn't seem to quit, you can look into the work of Dr. JackCruz.com. He has blog after blog after blog, and research papers and videos explaining why we all need to be out in the morning sun to get the specific frequencies of light that are healing to us. And one of the totally inexpensive things you can do is, if you're going to have a light bulb on at night, which most of us do, you can, or you're going to watch a television, or you're going to be in front of a computer, the first thing that you want to do at night is cover your whole body, even your neck, because that's where your thyroid is, with clothing, so that your skin is not being exposed to the junk light. And then I brought quite an assortment, because we've been really into using these for a while, of blue blocking glasses. These are probably some of the least expensive. They're very powerful, and you can put these on top of eyeglasses if you happen to need glasses. These red ones, these are a little challenging to look at night because they make it really hard. You can't see details as well. However, if you have trouble going to sleep at night, wearing these for at least an hour before you go to bed will help to calm the nervous system. So that's these little guys. Now, these are the ones I wear most of the time when I'm sitting in front of a computer, and I'm not in front of a computer right now, so I'm not wearing them, but if I was, I would be. And these are also blue blockers, and they're quite fashionable. People comment on them when I wear them, because whenever I go into a big box shop, particularly that has fluorescent tube lights, which are very, very detrimental. They're a completely unnatural light for the human being. I have these on. And sometimes I'll wear these. And these are interesting because these are made with a blue blocking shield that's a lot lighter than the others, but you don't see any of the yellow. So for people that need to have some protection when they're at work, but they don't want to look like they're doing something weird, you can order these kinds of blue blocking glasses. And I believe there's a company called Raw that is owned by an ophthalmologist, and he can actually take your glasses that are prescription and put a blue blocking shield on them for you that won't even show up. These are the ones that Rich wears, which are also very mild blue blockers, and he'll wear these when he's with patients. So anyway, there's lots of different choices, but it is so important to get good quality light. And the idea is that you want to go outside just as the sun is rising, and if you can spend an hour, oh my God, that would be such heaven for your body, with as little clothing as possible. For those of you who have an environment where you could be naked, that's ideal. Some of us have invested in bathing suits and things that allow for the ultraviolet and different shades of light to actually penetrate the clothing, so that we can get more of the light into our bodies. There's an enormous amount of research that talks about how receiving that light into the eyes makes an enormous difference in the way the brain functions and our production of mitochondria, our production of ATP in our mitochondria, the health of the mitochondria. And the mitochondria has everything to do with our energy. It's so important that we literally produce, depending upon our size and our activity, somewhere between 200 and 400 pounds of ATP a day. And we're utilizing it constantly for energy, and we couldn't even live for a minute without it. So the ability to convert and use and make ATP is essential, and the more effectively you can do that, the better it is, and the sunlight helps us do that. And the other thing that you should know is being out in the sun supports a process called autophagy. It's a big word. So what autophagy does is it breaks down our old ineffective cells so that they can be replaced with good new ones. And that process is extremely important when it comes to our mitochondria. And we have hundreds of them in every cell, and they all have membranes, and the light comes into those membranes and does profound communication. We're finding now, as physics and biology come together, that we are discovering that almost every communication that happens in our body is through photons or through light. Photo for light, photons. So the communication is all light driven. And so we need to have healthy light coming into the body to have healthy light communications for all the different functions in our body. And the statisticians and people who are really studying these issues are basically showing that the progression of disease has progressed as we have started using unnatural light, beginning with big jumps in health issues just with the incandescent light bulb. And as we work more and more with cell phones and computers and LED lights and the fluorescent tube lights, it becomes worse and worse. And the progression of frequencies on our cell phones is making things worse and worse. 5G is really scary with the type of research that's going on mostly in Europe, showing that like having a cell phone close to the head increases brain cancers to very, very large degrees. And when we do a program on that, I'll give you the actual statistics. But we've never seen brain cancers like we do now. We've never seen autism like we do now, ADD, ADHD, Alzheimer's disease, neurological issues, and also things like depression and anxiety. So all of these are huge and greatly affected by the quality of light that we receive, and greatly benefited by real sunlight. So being outdoors in the hours when the sun is shining with as little clothing on as possible is the best medicine for all of us. Barefoot if we can, on healthy grass that hasn't been herbicided and pesticided. And even sitting on, like I take a white sheet and lay it on the ground so I can see any red ants that are showing up. And I'll hang out as much as I can outside to be able to benefit my own body's healing process with real light, with healing light, with native light, not junk light. So that takes us through the light issues. I wanted to show you in another program when we really get into talking about cell phones and computers more. We'll actually be testing with this, but this is called a tri-field meter. And it's really scary when you put this next to a computer, or not so much a computer, but a cell phone. If you turn your cell phone on, you'll see it spiking these really high numbers, and you'll see just how far you have to go away from the cell phone for those numbers to come down. So these are not expensive. I think they're like $100 online, and they're really worth getting to be able to test your house. You can also test your electrical outlets. And one of the most important places to test with something like this is your bed. So let's talk a tiny bit about beds. These days there are a lot of toxic materials that are being used in new mattresses. And we want to be aware of that. And again, you know, I would send you to EWG, the Environmental Working Group, to find out what might be in a mattress if you're planning to get a new one. And there's something called barrier cloth. So if you cannot afford a mattress, an organic natural mattress, and you already have an existing mattress that you're enjoying using, you might want to look into getting a barrier cloth to protect yourself from toxins from the actual bed itself. And also, it's very helpful to have the natural frequency of the earth, the Schumann wave type frequency, magnetic frequency, when we sleep. And so there's a specific single polarity type of bed, a mattress pad, that puts that kind of magnetic support into the bed, and many people find it makes a huge difference in the quality of their sleep, reducing edema, reducing snoring, and all that sort of thing. We want to, as much as possible, reduce any pharmaceutical drugs that we're taking, if we can, and look for natural substances that will support the body in healing itself without adding toxins. And all you have to do is look at the side effects information on your medications. I'm not saying that you should get rid of everything. I'm just saying you should become aware of these things. Talk to your doctors about the side effects. Talk to educated people who might be able to help you to trial natural substances as you slowly look at reducing the existing medications that you're on. And I was with someone yesterday who had been on high blood pressure meds for a very long time, and we gave her some herbs to use. And I had her just reduce her medication by 1/8, checking her blood pressure 3 times a day. And within a few weeks, she was off of all of her meds and had no blood pressure issues. And for a while, when she would get really anxious over some issue, her blood pressure would spike, and then she would take her meds. And now instead, what she's doing is, if she gets anxious and notices that her blood pressure spikes, she takes her herbs and then checks to see if they did the job. And if they didn't, then she'll take her med. So I'd like you to know that your body will tell you what's true for you. And there's no reason why you couldn't check your own blood pressure and talk to your doctor about trialing these sorts of things. Oh boy, cell phones. Please, I beg of you, if you do nothing else, get your cell phones out of your bedroom. And when you're sleeping, turn them off. If they need to be on because of a potential emergency with a family member or something like that, put them in another room far enough away that you can check with your tri-field meter that it will not affect you, and so that you have the possibility of sleeping in an environment that will not be reducing your ability to heal yourself. Because sleeping is our body's one of its most important ways of rebuilding, healing, and supporting our functions. It's when we go parasympathetic, it's when we relax completely, it's when the body rebuilds and heals and also very effectively moves toxins out of the body. So getting, first of all, the cell phones out of the bedroom. Definitely that is not a place for television. It's not a place for your computer. If you have to have a computer in your bedroom, make sure that it's unplugged. And please unplug or turn off your Wi-Fi when you sleep, because that's another thing that profoundly affects the photons. And the photons, as we spoke about before, have to do with communication throughout your entire body as to how to heal itself, how to find its own equilibrium and sense of balance. So turning off your Wi-Fi is really an important thing. In Europe, almost everybody has a little remote control thing that they click when they go into their bedroom at night, and it turns off all the electricity in the bedroom so that your body gets a break. The other thing you can do if you have a large enough space is move your bed away from the wall, because your wall has the electrical wires in it. So if you can't turn off the electricity to your bedroom, then you can at least keep your body some distance away from the electrical wires that are holding electricity in them. So that's something that you can do that can also make a very, very big difference for you. I just want you to know that any one of these things that you do is beneficial. Don't feel like you have to do them all. I'm not saying all these things to you to overwhelm you, but just to give you an idea that we do have some control. And each thing that you do is, adds to the benefits for our bodies to be able to have the presence and the support to heal themselves without having to be bombarded. And it's really fascinating to me just how much an effect the quality of our light and our devices and what they do to that quality of light internally has on us. So please, when you're not using them, turn them off and give your body a break. The other thing is electric blankets. Please don't use them. They totally mess with your sleep, as does water beds, because they have electrical stuff going through them to warm them. And so they're not a natural thing for us to sleep on. In fact, when we sleep on an area where there's water underneath the surface of the earth, for many people that can cause really severe health issues, particularly kidney weakness. More and more this one's becoming more difficult, but being away from things like transformers and poles and the Wi-Fi towers, they're starting to put these small little Wi-Fi towers all over the place. So it's becoming more and more difficult for us to stay away from these sorts of things, and now much of the wiring is going under the ground. So we want to be aware of where that is and not stand barefoot in those locations. It's really, really weird. I used to always tell people, if you possibly can, get leather-soled shoes so that the magnetism of the earth can come through your shoes into your body, instead of the rubber-soled shoes that are great, protection for shock, but they keep us from experiencing the electricity. And in the DIY arena, there's wonderful information about how to actually take a little wire with copper and create an ability of the magnetism of the earth to come through a rubber-soled shoe. And they show you how to do that because it's harder and harder to find shoes with leather soles. If you're in a situation where your kitchen backs up to your bedroom, you definitely don't want to have your bed on the wall that the refrigerator might be backed up to, or an oven, or anything that has really high electrical charges, washing machines, dryers, all that sort of thing. You want to be, if you possibly can, on the other side of the room from that, and of course a little ways away from the wall. Oh my God, so much of the carpeting is toxic these days, and so my recommendation is that you look into natural wood or tile surfaces for your floors, and get rid of your carpeting. The backing is formaldehyde in almost anything but the most expensive 100% wool carpetings. So you really want to be rid of them. And even when you do have 100% wool carpeting, the likelihood of lots of toxic buildup to fill the carpeting itself is much higher than having a tile floor or a wooden floor or a bamboo floor that you can easily clean and affect much more effectively than with a carpeting. Some things that you want to go through the refrigerator and see if you can, in your pantries, to get rid of are, in particular, things that if your ancestors visited, they wouldn't even know what they were. We have these bizarre things, these sodas that are, I just call them frankenfoods. They're not even foods. They're food wannabes. You know, they're food replacements that are not nourishing. If anything, they are incredibly harmful and confusing to the body. You know, the whole autoimmune process that we look at in, I would say probably 80% of people now, almost everybody has some form of an autoimmune disease. And basically what that is the body is overwhelmed by toxins, and some of those toxins find their way to an organ and sit on the organ, and then the body goes to try and get rid of the toxin, and it harms the organ at the same time. And it's really just trying to help clean us up from all the toxic stuff that we're exposing ourselves to and eating. My dear friends, please do the best that you can to get toxic substances out of your life. I mean, boxed and canned things, boxed especially, bags of chips and all the rest of it. I mean, even when they say they're organic, a lot of them are using canola oil, which is a very toxic GMO'd oil. They're also rancid because of the way that they have been treated. These oils and things need to never have these extremely high temperatures. High temperatures immediately rancidify them. So eating bagged chips and things rather than making things for yourself can be really harmful. The sodas can be really, really harmful unless you're making your own out of sparkling waters and essential oils. And I like to use a green leaf stevia. You can get that organic. You can grow your own even. You know, there are many, many ways if you're willing to take some of the extra time to get real products. I mean, you can slice zucchini or carrots and or fennel or whatever and put it in the oven with some herbs that you like. I mean, carrots and fresh dill is delicious. You can first of all, you know, like use some melted coconut oil or one of the wonderful Andreas fresh oils. I love his combination of 5, and just lightly coat it, and add a little salt or pepper, whatever spices you might like, and put it in the dehydrator, and you take it out, you know, later in the day or the next day, and you've got a crunchy treat that's actually nourishing for you. So
Yeah.
there are ways, if we are willing to take the time, to create things that will help us to have the tastes and consistencies that we're used to, that our ancestors didn't have then either.
True enough.
But it's interesting, they did do a lot of crackling sort of stuff with
Sure.
with things like lard.
Mm-hmm.
And those are actually very beneficial for us when they're made with things like pasture-raised animal products. So please look into your foods and start to learn about what a difference it makes to have like eggs that are from chickens that have been running free in the pasture and pecking instead of eating GMO grains.
Exactly.
And that are, you know, living outdoors so they get the sunlight, because just as for us that sunlight is the most important nutrient for our bodies, it is for the animals too. So when they're kept indoors inside of these, you know, big buildings and then fed toxic food and given all kinds of antibiotics, those end up in the food and they end up in us. So it's real important to start looking at the foods that we're eating and little by little educating ourselves about, is what we're putting in our body nourishing us or harming us?
Yeah, in those lots they feed animals the manure from other animals mixed in with everything that they sweep up off the floor, corpses.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
It's really, really, really awful. I mean, I personally am
so that-
not a vegetarian any
Yeah.
longer. Because I know that when farmers are properly loving and caring for their animals, we don't have these kinds of problems. And my background is Lithuanian and Russian and Polish. My DNA calls for high quality proteins. I do a little bit more with organ meats than most, but those proteins are very nourishing and helpful for me. But they wouldn't be if they were from a toxic animal. What we're looking at is the air now has GMOs in it. And so everything we consume, from the water that comes down from the sky, rainwater, is toxic now. So there's nothing that we can consume any longer that has no toxicity. But there's a lot more benefit in eating something like venison than there is from a cow or that's been raised indoors with and fed garbage. There's incredible studies that are even showing in glaciers now that glacier water is being affected by the toxins that are falling onto the snow and through the air into the water. It's really unbelievable what we are doing to this earth. I mean, we just really need to start being aware. Just making little changes can make such big differences. I'm working with a family who has a young daughter with Hashimoto's, and they have all are self-professed junk food eaters, and that's all they had in their kitchen, and they're just taking one step at a time. Mom is saying, God, this is so weird. I never cook anything, and now I'm starting to learn how to cook, and it's becoming this really exciting process, honestly, for her and her daughter to cook together and start to discover things. And just by taking the flour products out of their diet, they're noticing a really big difference in their energy. It's incredible. We really get rewarded for doing this sort of thing, but it is, we are addicted. These substances not only are toxic to us, but they have an addictive quality. And we'll probably do a show, and I know I've done talks before about the addictive quality of sugars, how they're very similar to alcohol, how grains have a morphine-like quality to them, the gluteomorphines. For some people, there's the caseins also have a caseomorphine effect. So particularly the unnatural caseins. So there are ways to get something called a casein A2, which is a natural casein from wilder animals, and those caseins don't seem to cause that type of problem. So there's just so much that we can learn, and ways that we can keep flavors and tastes that we've become accustomed to in our lives, and but do them in a way that are beneficial to us. So soy products are a big deal. The only ones that seem to have any real benefit for us are the ones that are really fermented. There are some amazing benefits to an organic fermented soy called natto. Nattokinase is used a lot to help people with arterial sclerosis and increasing NOS. There's also fermented misos that have been used forever to help with the biome of the gut and our bodies, and seem to have an anti-carcinogenic effect in certain types of cancers. But for the most part, soy milk, soy powders are very harmful to the body. They have an estrogenic type quality, which is definitely not a good idea for men. So, and there are special ways of preparing different aspects of the soy that can be beneficial for women, but it's not just eating soy. So we want to take the soy products out of our diet, particularly soy proteins. And I like replacing those with high quality collagen products for most people, and some people do really well with organic rice or pea proteins. But my favorite is the collagen products, especially when there are multiple forms of collagen. I love the idea of fish collagens too.